The SEO strategy that I'm about to share with you has helped multiple seven-figure Shopify brands add an extra $1 million in the first 12 months to their organic revenue. This isn't your basic link building and keyword research video. I'm going to show you the exact specifics of our enterprise SEO strategy for how we add over $100K a month in organic revenue. Let's start with the fundamentals. Listen guys, we don't have to complicate this. At the end of the day, SEO is all about getting you more organic revenue. And any SEO expert or digital marketing expert who tells you otherwise is missing the point. The sole reason that we invest in these activities is helping make you more money into your bank account each month. And so that's always front and center our North Star. How much organic revenue are we generating per day, per month? What is that number? Are we seeing that trend increase or decrease? That will always be front and center, the single one KPI that you're looking to get. So that's an outcome. But the question is, how do we get that outcome? What we look at is 3 sub KPIs. Your backlink profile, how many backlinks do you have? Your domain rank, measured by SEMrush and Ahrefs, and lastly, your number of keywords. We look at both your total keywords being indexed for, and more importantly, your keywords in the top 10. At the end of the day, if you're seeing those 3 KPIs increase, the trailing indicator with your organic revenue, I can promise you 9 times out of 10, that's also gonna increase as well. So you don't need to complicate this. Where I often see brands just go wrong when they're working with SEO agencies is just SEO is this opaque field where we send money in, we don't really know what happens, and we hope something happens on the other side. If you're not measuring and able to know these numbers at any given moment for your brand, then you're probably missing something in your overall SEO strategy and approach. So let's dive into those items today. That's typically the big difference between the 7-figure brands and the 6-figure trying to get to the 8 figures is they don't know their data. They don't know their numbers. So I want you to write down right now, if you know this information, how much organic revenue are we doing each month? What is our domain rank? How many backlinks do we have? And we measure that number between Ahrefs, SEMrush, and Google Search Console and triangulate between all of those because each of those will report a different figure. And then lastly, what keywords that you're ranking for. How many total keywords are you indexed for? And more importantly, what keywords do you have in the top 10 and what is your current position? You would be surprised how many brands I see that just do not know these numbers. And the SEO engagement that they're currently working with is for some reason not highlighting those. So the main focus for how we've been able to grow brands to that 7 and 8 figure mark is by honing in on just those 4 data points. Just those 4 data points alone will paint the picture and show you, are you on an upward trend, coasting, or a downward slope? Following these strategies is how we were able to take Infiniwell from doing $47K a month in organic revenue up to over $113K within the first 90 days, focusing on just those core metrics. And like I said, those sub KPIs are going to be your indicators for are you improving or not to see the organic revenue that's going to come after that. So in their case, we were able to see 2 points added to their domain score for both Ahrefs and SEMrush. Their keywords in the top 10 went from 63 to 108. And our total keywords indexing also went up from 580 to 830. On the backlink profile, we saw an increase in the overall links in Google Search Console, but actually a decrease in some of these other platforms with SEMrush and Ahrefs. And this is largely because of some of the de-indexing that we had to do for toxic links that we didn't even want to be associated with the brand. Sounds great, right? Who wouldn't want to 2x the revenue within the first 90 days? And the way we were able to achieve that is going through our standard checklist. Normally in the initial days of engagement, we'll focus mostly on the technical side, fixing broken pages or broken schema, optimizing the meta titles, meta descriptions, H1s, the page content, while also simultaneously getting started on the backlink building campaign. And in majority of the instances, that's sufficient enough to see significant growth. But in many times we have initiatives that need a longer cycle. I'm talking 6 months, 12 months to really play out. And a really good example of this is with one of our partners with Recreations Outlet. And so they have a higher price ticket item with an average order value of $1,000, $2,000. That's a great price point. But that's not always the case. So sometimes we have initiatives that need to play out over 6, 12 months. I'm talking longer time frames. And while you should always be looking for quick wins and be able to justify the cost that you're putting into SEO, beyond that, you need to realize that some of these plays are really going to take more time and you have bigger competitors with bigger budgets that you're working against. And so in those instances, we'll have a little bit more of a carved out approach as far as mapping out the full cycle. Let me give you a specific example. One of our clients, Recreations Outlet, has items that they sell to your average day consumer, but they also have a wholesale side of B2B relationships. And as you can imagine, those B2B relationships are worth a lot more money and they're typically much longer sales cycles. And they generally have a lot more research that goes into it. So while initially our goal is to start ranking for keywords and getting organic revenue as fast as possible, and that's still the case for 95% of the brands that we work with, is go after revenue day one as quick as possible to help justify the amount of spend that you're putting into your SEO initiatives. But for these these longer carved out strategies that take time, but can also net bigger bucks, we need to make sure that we're going through the full buyer's journey and mapping out specific research points or questions and getting content around that. So we'll take a little bit less of a focus at purchase intent keywords and more from a research or informational topic and standpoint. And this is where you need to just provide a lot of really good value in the forms of video, blog content, information, cross promotion with other influencers or authority figures in the space. This is where you need to get really strategic and dialed in with not looking for a quick win, but rather trust along that whole buying journey. But at the end of the day, you're still utilizing the same strategy that we talked about for the 3-month sprint. 3 months and 12 months, it still comes back to the same thing. Your keyword rankings. Are you seeing those keywords and phrases with a better ranking each month? You should know very specifically your number for all your most important phrases. And if you're not seeing that increase, then you're not going to be able to get the end result that you want. So that's still the outcome, and that'll always be the outcome. But for these longer plays and these longer strategies, you still want to have that keyword destination in mind, but having those broken out segments. What is the information that comes before that decision? What if they don't even go straight to that purchase intent, but more so have these questions that come along the way, where you're then in to step in, provide value, establish that relationship, and close the contract and sale. And so the biggest thing that I want to highlight from all of this is, remember, this all comes down to keywords. If you have just one takeaway from this video, it should be this. You need to, month after month, know what are the top keywords that you are trying to optimize for. This could be anywhere from 10 to 100. We record both, so we ultimately get a giant keyword list of every possible keyword, but then get a condensed list of what are the most important ones. And you need to know what is your ranking month after month. You need to take this information, put it, record it in an Excel sheet so you can see this progression chart. There's no excuse for you not to be doing that. And if you're not doing that, you're simply just guessing it's going to work and hoping that you see more revenue at the end of the day. And after we work through all that technical SEO stuff, you want to continue to monitor it and make sure you're not seeing issues pop up, but you don't need to have dedicated resources to that going forward. So what we do is take that effort that we were previously doing in the technical side and direct it towards content. And content is where you really need to get more strategic and creative in mapping out the full buyer's journey. What are the questions that are seeing? What are the pain points they have? How can we build trust throughout that whole cycle? And so content takes the form of optimizing existing pages and going through and saying what pages are currently ranking well. Are there things that we can do to tweak and optimize them? Or are there keywords that we're currently not emphasizing? So I would start there, build off of the assets that you already have. A really great example of where I see this is doing internal links with your content on blog posts back to your money pages. And when I say money pages, what I mean are the product pages where ultimately you want to see someone make a purchase. Very oftentimes I'll see a website that has blog content that's ranking really well, but has low purchase intent. It's more informative, informational. And so the simple tweaks that I like to add in those instances is making sure that we have a product feature at somewhere in the bottom of that post. And this serves dual purposes. One, it makes it one step less for them to just go straight into the product and make that purchase without having to go to the site navigation, go back a couple pages, try to figure out where something is. So it keeps that continuous flow going. And it also creates an internal backlink, which is really important. We're gonna get to backlinks in a little bit. But that internal link also is another way to show that mapping of keywords and ideas on your website for Google to be able to read and make associations for both keywords and pages. All the content strategy comes back to your keyword list. So again, what we talked about at the beginning, you should have a full list of all the potential keywords that you wanna rank for, and then a condensed list of the squeezed down most important keywords. Next, what I would do is put a score next to that item. Is this informative? Is this transactional? Does this have high purchase intent? What you're likely to see is some of those high purchase intent ones can have a lot more competition. And so we can build a longer tail strategy around more of that information and research buyer persona by finding those items that are a little bit further upstream. A really great way to do that is think about what questions someone might have when they're trying to make a purchase of your product. Quite literally go to Google, type that in, and if you scroll down, you'll see other related searches. Or even as you're typing into the field, you might see other search recommendations come up. Those are really great indicators for what are similar type of topics or phrasing that people might use to find content. So make sure you're taking that information and then mapping out what is the purchase intent, what are similar phrases or expressions of talking about the same thing that I haven't realized, and map all that out for your content strategy. Next is the fun part, which is actually creating the content. And guys, I'm gonna have to say blog content still really works. We see a lot of conversions come through blog and informational content that builds trust and then later reinforces the purchase. And a great way to do that is by working with a content writer on your team for getting an outline of content, but then figure out what other assets exist that provide value. And so it's always going to be better when you're crafting your own YouTube video series and able to include that in the content. But let's suppose for a second you just don't have that time, you don't have that budget. What you can do is leverage external authority. And so what I mean by that is, let's suppose you have a sleep supplement that you're trying to optimize and grow. You might want to create content around that in the form of video, in the form of YouTube. And instead, what you can do is be an aggregator of that information. So you don't have to come up with the specific videos yourself. What you can do is link to external information that is valuable and provide the most comprehensive total guide. So even if you don't have the content built out yet today for more of those informational ones of how do I get better sleep? What things are impacting my negative sleep schedule? How can I stay in bed a little bit longer when I wake up first thing in the morning? How can I stop waking up in the middle of the night to take a pee? You can see how these phrases would ultimately be of interest to someone who might want to purchase a sleep supplement, if that's the example product that you're selling in this instance, of that informational journey. So again, what I would do in that case is have a complete comprehensive guide to how to optimize your sleep. And it's always going to be better when you write this information first and when you supplement with GIFs and video and all this rich media content that can really excel on that and build off of those building blocks. But if you don't have that information, find a famous neuroscientist who's talked a lot about sleep and embed his short YouTube video on your page talking about that same thing. So see where you can leverage credibility when you go and build trust. That's really what it is for this longer tail informational research that has questions that are way further upstream from making a purchase, is building that trust and providing them value along the way. The last thing that I'll say about content is quality is always better than quantity, but your velocity and quantity does matter. So we always look to get a minimum of 4 pieces of unique content each month, and we'll aim for typically anywhere from, I would say, 1,500 on the lower end up to 2,500, 3,000 plus in terms of length. What you want to do is figure out what are the top 10 current rankings for that keyword or key phrase, what are the XYZ topics that they discuss, and make sure that you're including all of that and then maybe 10% extra. So you essentially want to ultimately have the most complete guide and informational resource on any one specific search topic or question. This is a drawn out process. When we go through this, we work through extensive writing. We absolutely utilize AI tools to also map out some of these larger topics and trees and relationships between how these pages can play together. Because again, you're also going to be wanting doing internal backlinks for linking content to other content and thinking of it the structural guide of what are the subtopics that fall under this question? How do these cluster of ideas fit together? So a big piece of your content strategy is going to coming up with those clusters of topics, grouping them together, having rich and informative content on them, and then ultimately linking them in a strategic way. So great. Now you have all this content, but you say, hey Jay, no one's viewing it. I've made all these pages, but it's not getting any visitors. Now what? And that leads into our fourth and final piece, the backlink building strategy. Now, one of the best things you can do here, and one of the biggest mistakes that I often see from brands when I audit their sites, is they're not utilizing nearly enough internal backlinks. And so we'll talk about external backlinks in a second, but first just go through and make sure that you have sufficient enough internal links. So I've already talked about for blog pages that you see ranking, making sure that you have a product snippet in there or linking to the next funnel in that purchase journey. I promise you, if you start with just that and make sure you get a rich keyword variety in that, and that you're strategic in mapping out your keywords to those pages, you'll see a very meaningful difference from doing nothing but internal links alone. And while that's a great starting point, very rarely is it sufficient on its own. So a big piece and something we get started on from day one into any new SEO engagement is building out a robust and meaningful backlink profile. So we approach this from a 3-tier approach. We have an internal proprietary database of backlinks that we built out where we are able to go through and self-generate some of these. So many of these you might already be familiar with. Do you have a Google business listing? Do you have a Twitter profile, a Facebook, Instagram, a Pinterest? Even if you're not using some of these accounts, you'll very often see that the domain authority that comes from having a profile on these businesses will ultimately link back to you. And so we have a giant database that we've just built out over the 12 years of doing this of websites where we can build out backlinks ourselves. And that's a really great starting point. But for some of these more competitive areas where we're going against big name brands, we need to get a lot more dialed in strategic with our approach. And so for that, we utilize a lot of paid promotion. We're part of a variety of different publication networks that you can think of as your PR arm. And while the PR from getting the eyeballs and impressions from an article is great, what it's also doing is building up that domain rank. You can think of it like your PR arm. What you're really after is the link authority that comes with it. A big piece of that KPI point that we talked about with your domain rank is going to come from your backlink profile. And so the way that works is that when Google sees website A with 10,000 websites linking to it about that one specific phrase, and website B has 100 people linking to it, Google is always going to assume that website A has more authority on the topic. And so at least 25 to 50% of all of our budget in terms of time, capital, and resources is going in strictly on this backlink profile. Again, you need to do the technical SEO, you need to go through the content and optimize those pieces. I'm not saying those are not important, but I really need to illustrate how important backlinks are, is that anywhere from 25, more often 30, 35, 40%, up to 50% of our total focus in resource, capital, and focus is going specifically just on these backlink building. The other way that you can build a good link profile organically is by coming up with case studies, finding co-promotions that you can do with similar brands. So if you have a fitness product or a supplement, what is someone else in this space that isn't a direct competitor that offers a complement? So it could be running shoes or workout gear if that's related to your supplement brand that you ultimately want to pair with. Find ways where you can do creative link building exchanges where you can create a backlink for their profile and vice versa. The other thing that we see work really well for brands that are maybe more in the B2B space is doing co-licensed case studies together. Suppose you utilize a variety of softwares or programs to manage and facilitate your business. Come up with a case study that's capturing that and feature the brand in question that you're using for service delivery of that tool. So let's recap about going about this. You have 4 data points that you're tracking. Your North Star is always organic revenue each month being generated. I look predominantly at Google Analytics for this number. Your 3 sub KPIs, total backlinks, your domain ranking, and the number of keywords that you're indexing for, and keywords specifically in the top 10. And I promise you, if you just record those 4 data points and then track that month-to-month progress, you'll know very quickly, are you seeing growth or loss of growth in your SEO? And so you can take everything that I just shared with you and implement it on your own, and I guarantee you'll get results. Or you can skip the curve and get in contact with me today. We'll give you a free audit and see what we can do to help your website. In either case, check out more videos that we have on YouTube, learn more about how we grow brands to 8 figures plus on Shopify, and subscribe for more content like this.